Hi everybody, it's Ann Quinn with Tell Me Your Story, and my guest today is Bill Harris. Bill Harris is a retired educator from Cedarville High School, where he taught my favorite subjects, history and government. And also Bill is our board president for the library. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you for having me here.
Yes, you know, because we've had these great conversations over the years about books and about history.
Right.
And do you miss teaching?
I still miss the give and take. One of the things that I really tried to emphasize in my classrooms was critical thinking. So a lot of my lectures were more question answer. I would give a question, they would try to answer it. I would come back with another question, they would try to answer it, and I would come back with another question. One of my favorite memories is of doing that in a classroom, and finally a girl raised her hand and said, "Why don't you just tell us the answer?" I said, I don't do that.
But you know what, Bill? I never had that experience in school. See, that really helps to open up history. It was just rote memorization. It was like, what have you read? And you just spill it back out without doing critical thinking. So your kids were at an advantage for having that.
I hope so. I felt, I got positive feedback that it was working, that students enjoyed that type of atmosphere.
Now, did you teach American history, European history, world history?
All of those.
All of the above?
I taught all the sophomores, because we were in a small school district, I taught all the sophomores in American history, some of the freshmen in a modern world history, starting from the scientific revolution to the present. And then with seniors, I taught AP European history. And then I also taught government, and I taught AP government, and then I had a current issues class, which was a wide variety of things.
Have you ever seen, I'm sure you have, like Jay Leno used to do that show where he would go out into like the public square and he would ask people, like, can you tell me the three branches of government?
Right.
And nobody could answer.
I always felt that was edited, that they got just the ones that they really wanted. They didn't get all the people. There had to be some people who understood that. Maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe not.
Maybe
right.
Not.
Yeah. So, we just got through with this past election. We're not going to talk politics, but what do you think about people's just general understanding of government and how it works? I mean, do you think that we are a literate society in America that understands the process?
You would think since the election of 2000 that people would understand what the Electoral College is all about, and that they would understand that it's those votes that decide the election, not per se the popular vote. So, and that determines and influences a candidate's schedule as to where they're going to go. You're not going to go to Wyoming or Montana or Idaho and waste time there for 3 electoral votes when you can go to Ohio and get 18 electoral votes.
Right.
Or Pennsylvania and get 20 electoral votes.
Well, at least we don't have to worry about hanging chads.
That's
with
true.
This one. That just drove me crazy. Hanging chads. So at least they got rid of that.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I still feel that both sides play the negative card so much that that's what influences the election more than anything else. I'm not voting for this person, but I'm voting against this person.
Would you, when you were teaching government, did you have kids like take sides and, like you're this half of the room are Democrats, this half of the room are Republicans, and then debate each other and then switch? And did you ever do that?
I've tried that a couple times. One of the big things I try to do, since Cedarville was a very conservative area, was that I tried to give them the other alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I always tried to make sure they understood was that I'm not trying to change their opinion. I just want them to see and understand the other side of an issue or a candidate or whatever. So I tried to. They knew what my stance was. And
yeah.
I was not. Many teachers try to stay in the middle there, and have kids guess what they were. I felt they needed to see a different side and see that side is not the enemy.
Right.
So that's the way I guess I presented it every time.
So when you're doing reading for leisure, do you still find that you want to read about history and like political memoirs or biographies, or do you like to go, no, I'm just into sci-fi right now? What do you enjoy reading now?
I enjoy both. I'm rereading Hamilton by Ron Chernow. I got for Christmas a year ago his newest biography about Grant, which was fantastic.
Oh.
I'm reading a biography of Hitler, so I'm getting the whole gamut there.
You are getting the gamut.
But then I'm also, I need books just to read, just fiction books to escape.
Right.
So.
Do you have any favorite authors you follow, or certain genres? Like when I want to just not do anything deep, I read a lot of Lee Child's books, which is Jack Reacher.
Yeah, I like to read his. I read J.J.
Yes, yes.
Also, Kellerman was his first name.
Oh, yes.
Jonathan Kellerman.
Mm-hmm.
I read all of his books, and I love his because of the mental aspect of those. So I like a lot of murder mystery type books. Political thrillers I like to read too.
I like political thrillers too.
And then I'll go back to history. I just finished a book about the collapse of the royal dynasties after World War I. So the Hohenzollerns,
yes,
the Romanovs, the Habsburgs.
Well, you're going to have to tell me the name of that book, because I think I would enjoy that.
So it was good. So.
Okay. Tell me something that you didn't know. You said you just got through reading Grant.
Right.
Tell me something that you think most people don't know about Grant, or something that you didn't know about Grant.
Well, he's always maligned as being a very poor president.
Right.
He's probably in the top 10 of the bottom 10. So he's not there with Harding and Buchanan, but he's always, mainly because of the scandals, some of the scandals that occurred in his administration. But I didn't realize how much he was, if he could have, he couldn't have stayed in office, but he didn't, was that I think he might have done something with Reconstruction that would have helped us alleviate some of the problems we're having today, because we would have fought those battles much earlier. He was all willing to enforce Reconstruction in the South longer than what occurred. I mean, we know about the Compromise of 1877, and I think he would have fought more to help stop the rise of the KKK and stop the rise of the Black Codes.
Did he just have one term?
He had 2 terms.
He had 2 terms.
But
and then Hayes came after him? Rutherford Hayes?
Yes, that's when they had the compromise.
Yes.
Over the Florida and Louisiana electoral votes.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And then the compromise was, okay, we'll let Hayes win, and we'll have the electoral votes for him, but the deal is that they remove all the federal troops out of the South.
Right. And that was the beginning of the end.
Yes, and so that little bit that was gained was now lost, because that's when they put in all the black codes and that type of stuff, Jim Crow laws.
Now, is it true he was a big drinker? Is that a true story?
Chernow doesn't seem like he was a person who just couldn't handle his drink very much, and so he knew it and stayed away from it, and he tried as much as he could. It's not that he didn't, but it seems like every time that when he was during the war, if something went bad on his side, they blamed it on the drink. They said, "Oh, he must have been drunk," and that time. And there's always people say, "Well, I saw him drunk and I saw him staggering and stuff." But Chernow doesn't believe that he was an alcoholic. He just knew that he couldn't handle drink very well, and so he shied away from it most of the time. But he didn't say that he didn't drink either. So.
And didn't he write his own biography,
yes.
autobiography, because he was broke and he needed the money?
He was worried, and he was dying. In fact, he died just a few weeks after he finished the book.
Okay.
But it was it's mainly about the Civil War.
Okay.
But I guess it's one of the best ones written.
Do you like, just in terms, I guess it's half a dozen one way or the other, because I did read Hamilton.
Okay.
But I wonder, I mean, so you liked Grant just as much or even better than Hamilton? or was it
just as much? They're different people, different
Yeah.
time periods. Chernow obviously likes his subjects. He did one on John D. Rockefeller, which was very good, and you learned some interesting things about them that you don't necessarily know. But I think also he likes that subject, and so he'll that comes through in his writing, just like with Adams.
Oh, David McCullough.
David McCullough.
Yes.
I loved his Truman. I thought that was one of the best ones.
Oh, I love the Truman too. Yes, that was excellent.
Interesting thing about that, it's just kind of show. This will be an indicative of sometimes college professors. I was taking a graduate class on U.S. history from 45 to 72. Something that I lived through, but anyway.
Right, we were there.
I was there. But anyway, as a graduate assignment, I had to take a book and evaluate it, and I was going to use Truman by McCullough. But the professor said, well, you can, but then you have to read this book anyway, because McCullough's not a historian. So it was that kind of, he doesn't have his PhD in history, so therefore he's not necessarily a real writer, historian.
Right, he didn't do his research.
Right,
yeah.
Even though he did do his research, though.
Yeah.
So I had to read.
But he certainly has made history interesting
Yes.
and alive so that people want to pursue it versus some of those dull professors.
Right.
that
Right.
write those
There
books.
might have been a little jealousy because of him getting so much publicity and also probably money, because he sold a lot more copies of his book than some of the others have done in theirs. But
So were you always a reader? Like when you were
Yes.
a child? I mean, like from the get-go, you loved reading?
I loved reading.
Okay. Do you remember what you read as a child? What interested you? Like, say, maybe tell me you're 10.
I remember reading mysteries again. There was a series about, it was a little girl, she was probably 10, 12 years old, Trixie Belden.
You are a Trixie Belden fan?
I read those books when I was growing up. I didn't.
Oh, Bill, we have even, oh my gosh. Do you know I am Trixie Belden.
Okay.
I love Trixie Belden.
So that's some of the first things I remember.
Oh my gosh, I love it that you love Trixie Belden. Wasn't that amazing how they globetrotted and they wouldn't have maybe Miss Trask, the governess, came along a little bit, but basically they were out on their own.
Yes,
I think they were at a dude ranch in Arizona, and then they were off in Hawaii. They lived this incredible life. I wanted to be a Bob White.
And then I read some other books. I think my sister was in a book club for some reason, which is odd because she doesn't really read that much. But we got several biographies, so I remember reading a biography of Daniel Boone, and then one of the Swamp Fox. Mm-hmm. So those are some of my earlier memories of books that I read. As far as I can remember, I've read all the time. I read when I was in high school, Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. So
that's deep for a high schooler.
Yeah. So I was fascinated for a while of World War II, probably because of my age. My dad was a World War II veteran.
So was mine.
So that influenced me. Later on, when I was taking some history classes, especially in graduate history, it was more, if I would have did things a little bit differently, I would have gone the professorial route. I would have been, my area of concentration would have been World War I.
Really? Okay. More than World War II.
More than World War II, mainly because and I know it sounds stupid, but without World War I, there's no World War II in so many ways. Mm-hmm. You know, so many of the people who were involved in World War II were also were influenced by World War I. I mean, Hitler, on the day of the armistice, he's in a hospital bed recovering from blindness, which unfortunately he did recover, but he's vowing revenge then. So, and
did Hitler serve?
He served. He was decorated. He was a message carrier between trenches and that type of stuff. Not well liked. but at the same time kind of respected. He never really made it much higher than what we would consider. Well, I was in the Marines, and it was maybe a lance corporal or a corporal, so an E4, something of that sort. But he still got decorated for a lot of things, and he was thought of as a good soldier. Not necessarily officer material, because he didn't, but he certainly was considered a good soldier.
Now, is this, you just told me that you read recently a biography.
I've been reading one.
Is this a new biography, or is it kind of one that's been around?
I can't remember if it's one, I have to look at the date. I can't remember when it was published. I read a couple others. Hitler, A Study in Tyranny, which was one of the more popular and well-respected biographies of Hitler, and that's been out since the 60s. But I think this one was a little bit more recent. So it hasn't spread too much light on him in that sense. It's been a different read.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, are you a newspaper reader?
We get yes.
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 So you still like a physical newspaper versus going online and looking your news
Well,
up?
yes and no. We get the Sunday Dispatch. We get the newspaper, but it got so expensive after a while that we just get the online version through Monday through Saturday.
Yeah, isn't it crazy how much that went up?
I know. It's
Yeah.
crazy how much I'm paying for just the Sunday paper. And
Right.
I understand they have to do that, but at the same time, it makes it tough for average everyday people to justify that expense for something that you're going to read and then put away.
I do use my tablet a lot to read books and to even get the news, but there's something about the ritual of a physical newspaper, the way you crack it in your hand and you fold it, and then you have your morning, like, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I will have my tea or a Diet Coke over the newspaper. And it's like, that's how I want to start my day, is with that the physicality of touching and even smelling a newspaper. And I know that in 10 years there'll probably be no more paper newspapers anymore.
Probably not.
Yeah, I know we are aging dinosaurs when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get people to understand how it's just so satisfying to read a paper newspaper.
And it's the same thing with a book.
Yeah.
I still like having a book, although I have it on my tablet, and I use that more than anything else. I get an awful lot of books through here, through the e-books and that type of stuff. So,
you know, I tell you what I do appreciate about an e-book. I don't know the meaning of a word. I like that instant, because otherwise I'd have to write it down, circle it, go back to a dictionary and look it up.
Right.
So it's so satisfying to look up the meaning right then and there. And then I also appreciate how I can enlarge the font.
Right.
that's pretty wonderful too.
I do like that. So I had a Nook when that came out, and now I just use the iPad, and it's a constant thing. I always use the library's e-books, so I'm always checking there, and I have books on hold.
We're doing gangbusters with these e-books.
Well, I check every week since I've been on the board. I started looking at how many.
This is how we circ so many books.
Yes, and I think the last month it was 1,900 books, e-books.
Yes, it's
when
wonderful.
I first came here, it was well less than 100, in the 2 digits or something.
Right.
So I remember when it got up over 100, I thought, well, I must be checking out more books.
So when you and Vicki were raising your children, was reading a big part of your ritual?
Absolutely. Yeah. We had the first two, Angie and Nikki. We have 4 kids. The first two, they had books coming in that were basically Dr. Seuss type books. Mm-hmm. And then the last two, Mike and Megan, they got a lot of sweet pickles, I think it was, or
Sweet Pickles?
Or something. It was something pickles, I found. But it had a lot of different animals and stuff, and there was a lot of good stories, and we read them all, and we read the stories to them. Some of my favorites, and I used to use this as an example in my current issues class when I was talking about sexism and that type of stuff. There was a book that was called Don and Donna Go to Bat. Mm-hmm. And these were 2 twins who looked exactly alike, except for one's a boy and one's a girl. The boy liked baseball. The girl would get up there and her knees would shake and everything else. And it was a big game. He couldn't make it, so he told her to take his uniform over to this so somebody could wear it. While she's going over there, it's falling out of the bike, out of the basket of the bike. So she puts it on. She gets there. They think she's him. She gets up and she ends up hitting the ball, hitting the winning run in, and that type of stuff.
I love this book. I love it.
Hold on. It's also written in the 1950s, early 60s. So when they find out that she's a girl, they oh, that's wonderful. You can be the manager. You get to wash all of our uniforms.
Oh, I hate this book. You can wash all of our uniforms.
So that's how it ended. So we always change the ending of that book.
That you know what? But that is a book from the 50s and early 60s.
So,
that is.
So I remember that one.
Now, did you learn how to read? Because I distinctly remember this in first grade. We did read Spot
yep.
and Jane and Dick.
Yep, I remember those.
Look,
right.
Puff. So that's how
Run,
you
Spot,
learned.
Run. Yes,
yeah.
that's how I learned.
Yeah.
So, and we try to infuse it into our kids too. We just felt that if they could read, everything else will come along. Because if you can read, then you can do so many other things. If you can't read intelligently, you can't. What
about your grandchildren? How many do you have?
We have 7 grandkids.
And I know you've bought a lot of them here over the years. So to me, they come across as readers. But are they big into reading?
Yes. The youngest one just learned is in first grade. So and then with all this whole pandemic stuff, he's probably been set back a little bit. But he's coming along with his reading. So.
Okay.
But all the others read. They know that they're going to get books or something from
for Christmas and birthdays.
So we've gotten sets of books for them. I forget, there was a Magic Treehouse set. We got it for a couple of different families so they could read that, and they read all through that. So
I always consider it's not a proper Christmas or a proper birthday unless I get at least one book.
Yeah.
And that to me, I know that sounds nerdy, but I just knew that I was going to get a book. And then you would spend like all Christmas Day or all your birthday
yep.
with your new book. It was wonderful.
My kids would make jokes about what my Christmas list, because usually it was half books.
Yes.
So I was especially trying to read as much as I could on different interpretations or different parts of World War I. So I was constantly putting in books for that. But then there was some other ones that I would look at. Like I said, when Chernow, since I read Rockefeller first, and then I read Hamilton, and then when I found out that he had Grant, I read those by him.
Was it John D. Rockefeller?
John D. Yes.
Does he come across as a villain? Kind of like Carnegie or Carnegie?
Well, in both cases, I think you have to look at the times too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go with moral relativism because it's not that, but
that's the way it was.
Yeah, I mean there was Carnegie. He's like a Jefferson in the sense of that dichotomy of a person. There's the practical Carnegie, the businessman who is ruthless, uses competition and everything else, and then there's the idealistic Carnegie where he wants
philanthropic,
right, and all those things that he did, and he did an awful lot. I mean, we're sitting in a library that's Carnegie money.
Right. In fact, I've got an article on my bulletin board above my desk where the Carnegie Foundation gave us $15,500 to build this building.
Right.
So in 1903, and I find that so amazing to see how many thousands and thousands and thousands of families and children have marched through here thanks to that contribution.
Right. So
yeah.
I mean, so in that sense, I think you have to kind of balance him out in that sense. Was he ruthless? Yes, he was ruthless. Was he more ruthless than all the others? No. Some of them were even more ruthless. His partner, Henry Clay Frick, was much more ruthless with his workers. And in fact, and some of the other ones were also. But so when it goes, but going back to Rockefeller, I think he treated him fairly. I mean, he certainly made sure that you knew that there were some things that he did that were common practice for the day, but were very underhanded business tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he realized in his business where to be. He knew that being the wildcatter trying to get the strikes of oil, it's a very iffy business. Everybody's going to need to have that raw crude oil refined, and so he dominated the refining market.
Right. So he was revolutionary, I guess, because he was able to see the market for
Right.
that where other people couldn't see it.
Right. So what in history called a horizontal monopoly, that he controls one aspect of the process, whereas Carnegie was just the opposite. He owned the mines, he owned the railroads that shipped the ore, he owned all the smelting plants and everything else. So he tried to control everything from the raw material to the finished product. So he had a vertical type of monopoly. So there were two different types, and both of them were very successful. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, you see, you've given me a number of books that I'm going to want to read. It's like, do you ever find it overwhelming sometimes, like you'll get 5 books at the same time from the library, and you don't know which one to start?
Yeah, I get some ideas, and it's like, oh, I can't read all of them at once. I wish I could.
Now, I have a peculiar habit of sometimes reading 3 or 4 books simultaneously. Do you do that?
And like I said, I'm reading Hamilton. I'm also reading Hitler, and I'm reading a novel right now by Dana Stabenow. So.
Okay. And then I always ask everybody, because I have another very peculiar habit that most people find abhorrent, but I will often read the end of the book.
Yeah.
Because I can't stand the excitement. I worry about the character, and I want to see if they live, or even if I know the ending because it's historical, I won't say I do it 100% of the time, but I do it 80% of the time.
Okay.
I will read the end of the book. And most people in the book business or library business just find that just like the worst thing you could do.
I don't. I purposely don't read the ending of it, but
yeah,
I can understand why you would.
yeah.
Which reminded me of the book by Eric Larson, Dead Wake, about the Lusitania, which is a fantastic book.
Okay.
You know what's going to happen to Lusitania. It's going to get torpedoed and it's going to sink. But all the stories up to it, and then when you realize in the book that maybe it didn't have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it was. He's a good historical writer who writes it like a novel.
I just read a book, a new book by him, but I can't think of the title of it. It was an Eric Larson book, brand new. I just read it. I hate that. I read so. Do you read? It's like I read so much, I muddle. I get things muddled together.
Yes.
That's why I'm trying to keep a journal now, and I never really have done that. Do you do that? Do you journal the books that you've read?
Because there's sometimes I'll pick up a book by an author, and I try to, if it's a series of books, I try to go in the order of the series, but it's difficult unless you buy them to get them all the time. And I'll find myself, oh, I did read this book because and sometimes I've read it all the way through, and oh yeah, now I remember it all. So, and probably because of reading so much, sometimes storylines get kind of jumbled together.
Yeah.
But I've thought about having a journal, but then I would have to start writing down all the books that I've read, and I can't remember all the books I've read.
No, heck no, not at all. Well, Bill, it's been a delight to talk with you today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
You are a book lover's dream. I mean, I could sit here for the rest of the afternoon and pick your brain about what you've read, and because I think we have similar. Anybody that's a Trixie Belden fan, we're in the same camp. And I advise anybody out there to explore Trixie Belden, because those were darn good books.
They were good. They were fun.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me,
Thank
for
you
telling
for
me your story. And we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.